The last one is a very special one for me. Bear with me while I try to get through this. In 2012, there was a tragedy in Newtown, Connecticut. And
I do not know you, but I am your brother.
You do not know me, but I am your protector.
I will run into a burning building to save your life.
Though I do not know your name, I will take a bullet for you.
Though we've never met,
I believe in duty and sacrifice
of self.
Your family is my family.
Is my family. Your life is my duty.
What's going on, guys? Time for another episode of Behind the Uniforms today. I'm super excited to have this gentleman, and I'm also super excited about what you brought because it's an Irish whiskey that we don't have on the whiskey wall. So real quick context, the way that this show works is that we are all about bringing you the stories behind the uniforms to show that these are the men and women who serve and protect our communities and our country and just want to go home to their families at the end of the day too. They bring a bottle for sharing and for future Leos, first responders, veterans. We share a cocktail. You share a couple stories. We ask that everybody share the video. So that's it. Tell them all who you are while I pour.
my name is Russ Wininger, and I've been a police officer just starting my 27th year here in the Capital Region in Connecticut.
That's a long time.
Yes, sir.
That's not all that you do though, right?
No, I'm also the president of the local Fraternal Order Police Lodge, North Central Lodge here in Connecticut.
What does that mean? What do you guys do?
Well, we're nationwide. We are the largest police organization in the country, comprised of over 327,000 members nationwide.
Wow.
We have 1,200 here in Connecticut, comprised from 10 different local lodges. And our local lodge has almost 300 members in it in the Capital Region.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Cool. So first of all, cheers to you.
Sláinte.
So where do you want to start? Delicious. You want to go high? You want to go low?
I don't know. I guess we'll start high. We can start with a high.
Let's go for it.
All right. So the whole idea behind the Bushmills Black Bush is that it's an Irish whiskey and it's much smoother. I'm not a big whiskey drinker, so I wanted to, a little self-serving that I would bring something I could palate here.
I like your taste. I don't have it. That's a win.
And having been over there several times, I've been to Ireland. I brought some back, and I have a very special bottle that I've had for almost 20 years now, and it was 18 years old when I bought it, and I'm saving that for retirement. So That's going to be the bottle for that.
Excellent. Excellent. Good taste.
Thank you.
All right, first story, go.
First story. Well, in front of me, I brought a couple of gifts for you. I have some challenge coins. The challenge coins were developed in World War I, primarily for Special Forces unit, and It was kind of a pride thing to be in a particular unit. And you would identify yourself if challenged by another soldier to what unit were you in, and you would have to produce a coin. And if you were challenged and you didn't have a coin, there were a lot of circumstances that would happen to you. The biggest one was you would have to buy the round of drinks.
Yep.
And the converse, if you challenged somebody and they had the coin, then you would have to buy the round of drinks.
Yep.
So the ones I brought here are kind of special to me and kind of tie in with everything that we do here. So the first one is for our local Fraternal Order Police Lodge. We were chartered 10 years ago, celebrating our 10th anniversary this year. And what the Fraternal Order Police does is it brings us together, just what it says. It's a fraternal order. It's like being in a fraternity with police officers. And it's outside of work, and it's outside of bosses and politics, and it gives us a chance, just like we're doing now, to sit down and have a conversation, to network, to meet new people, and to kind of not have to worry about work, but still be in a group of people that you feel comfortable talking with. So that is the first one here.
And we'll have Kyle do a pan shot of all
Okay.
of these.
The second one that I have here is a coin that we did as a fundraiser for the National Police Memorial. And one of my best friends owns a bar in Washington, D.C. called Kelly's Irish Times. And it is the cop bar to go to when you go to Police Week. And so I brought that one because it ties in with our police and our Irish heritage. Most people don't know, but when the Irish immigrated from Ireland to the United States, being a police officer was one of the only jobs they could get. You used to see the signs that said Irish need not apply. Well, that's because they were kind of substandard and this was the only job they could get, so they were cops.
Gotcha.
This one here is another Irish one, and it's a slogan that we came up with, and it says, "Keep calm and have some crack." And crack is an Irish word that means to have a good time, to sing songs and tell stories, just like we're doing here today, so It's very apropos. And the last one is a very special one for me. Bear with me while I try to get through this. In 2012, there was a tragedy in Newtown, Connecticut, and our organization solicited money across the country from other Fraternal Order Police Lodges, both state and local, to raise money, and we made 1,000 coins. and they have the name of all the victims for the tragedy on one side and the logo of the Newtown Police Department on the other. And what we did was we donated these to all the first responders. So we gave 800 coins to the Newtown Police Department to give to the troopers and the officers and the fire and the EMS personnel, and everybody responded, and then came in the days afterwards and covered the shifts in the town and did the escorts for the family, so they could give them out kind of as a token for recognition. And then we held back 200 that we sold to our membership because they wouldn't be getting them. And so as a limited edition, I want you to have that because we really do appreciate what you do for us.
Thanks, brother.
Thank you.
I really appreciate that. That's awesome. All right, well, you're a little choked up on camera.
Yeah, that's kind of a tough one to get through. I spent 3 days down there afterwards working shifts. We did funeral escorts. We did security at the houses of the victims of the family. We directed traffic. And then Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, we relieved their entire department so they could go home and be with their families, and we worked their shifts for them during that time.
How'd you get through that? How'd these guys all get through that?
Well, it's kind of ironic because actually the Fraternal Order of Police played a big role. One of our state lodge officers works in a neighboring department. He was also one of the first people on scene. He was kind of like second in charge, trying to help coordinate everything because it is a smaller department. And one of the things that happened is all these other agencies came in, and the state police had their people, counseling their people, and the FBI had their people, and the fire department had their people, and the cops were kind of left in the wind. And not that they didn't provide the service, but cops don't want to talk to civilians about something like this that would really bother them. Yep. So what we did on the National Fraternal Order Police side, we have certified counselors that are generally former officers that have had lots of training in this type of thing. And the National FOP sent 2 counselors out to Newtown to counsel their officers, to offer the services so that they could talk their way through it and try to deal with what they had seen when they went inside the building that day.
One of the things that we've talked a lot about, that we've had guests on the show who have talked about the challenges that their loved ones have faced, is that nobody talks about the cumulative stress that a lot of officers go through. You're in Iraq or Afghanistan when you're in the military, something bad happens very, very quickly. It's a little bit different when you're in policing because it's years of getting beat on a regular basis. And I think it's good and important that more and more people are starting to talk about the cumulative effects of what you guys go through on a regular basis.
Well, it's generally not a favorable topic to talk about.
Of course.
And the biggest reason being is the fear of being labeled as having some kind of a mental illness because you suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. So there's a reluctance to say anything or to get involved because you don't want to lose your job, you don't want them to take your gun and badge away, and you don't want to be labeled.
Of course.
So then you sit on it and you don't deal with it, and then you turn to excesses or something to try to relieve the stress, and usually they're negative. And so it has the opposite cumulative effect that at some point it's all going to catch up with you.
Right.
So what we try to do is we try to encourage people that when you're in a situation where it's very traumatic, where there's a death, something that's really upsetting, to get the counseling and put aside the fact that there really isn't that stigma because it happens to everybody, and you really owe it to yourself and to your family to go and get the help following something like that. And it's slowly gaining ground where people are kind of accepting it. But it's something that it's not going to happen overnight.
Absolutely. You have a positive story for me? Because this is some tough stuff that we're talking.
Yeah, you know what? It's the job is a great job. And what I tell the new guys, and as I explained to you earlier, I have a lot of friends in law enforcement that I've met over the years through different circumstances. And I tell the new guys that it's very, you're doing yourself a great disservice if you don't take advantage of the networking that's involved in this job, because you have great opportunities, and not just for police. You meet business owners and you meet families and citizens and people you come into contact with, and sometimes you develop friendships. So one of my favorite stories is, this is my 26th year going to Washington, D.C. for Police Week. I started the first year on the job, and I went down there, and we find that it helps to recharge the batteries. For as tragic it is because you're going to pay respects for somebody who lost their life in the line of duty, it also kind of pulls everything back around and reminds you why you do it.
Sure.
And you're surrounded with your friends that you've met over the course of the years from other agencies, from other states, and even people that are non-law enforcement. And when you get done, you kind of have that weight off your chest, that monkey off your back, and you got that breath of fresh air. Now you're ready to come back and do the job again for another year. And so there's a pretty significant group of us, and it kind of changes as people's life changes. You get married and you have kids, and you can't always go. I've been very fortunate that I've been able to go every year that I've worked. And And so in meeting new people and meeting friends, I had a very good friend of mine who used to come down on a regular basis, and his nephew got hired as a police officer in New York City. And so he came down his first year and he was all gung-ho, you know, shaved close head and spit shine boots and the uniform and everything else. And he really took to it. He liked the camaraderie. He appreciated what the whole event was for. And so he started coming with us every year. So a couple years back, he was all excited. He was going to introduce us. His supervisor was coming down from his unit in the city. So very casual. There was a parade going on and we were all hanging out, having some adult beverages, and he went to go make introductions. And so he gets to his boss and, you know, shake hands and how you doing, nice to meet you. And his boss turns around and introduces one of his friends. And he said, hi, this is my buddy Pat. And I said, hey, Patty, how you doing? And, you know, the Irish, we kind of get, you know, kind of going. And he kind of looked at me and he says, excuse me? And I said, hey, Patty, how you doing? Now, I'm assuming that he took offense that I was calling him Patty. And he says, do I know you? And I said, yeah, you know me. And now this is the first introduction. And he says, well, how do I know you? And I said, you know me. And he goes, no. And now he's starting to get upset. I said, okay. I said, 2003. Okay, this was 11 years later, so this was 2014. I said, Game 6 of the ALCS between the Yankees and the Red Sox. I'm a huge Red Sox fan.
I'm sorry.
I said, you're working a detail at Yankee Stadium. He goes, well, I work a lot of overtime. I said, no, this was you were working. He says, I don't think so. I said, yeah, it was. I said, I come down with 3 guys I work with. We had a rental car. I said, and you parked us over at the Federal Building by the old Yankee Stadium. And he goes, well, you know, that's where we park cops. And he's kind of shrugged it off. I said, and the guy driving the car was a rental car. He said, he actually backed into your unmarked cruiser and there's a detective inside on the phone. And he goes, that kind of sounds familiar. But he doesn't want to admit that, you know, because he's already put up the front that, you know, he doesn't know me. And so we're going on a little bit more, and I said, all right, so we get out of the car, and I said, we took our jackets off, and we had all our Red Sox gear, and I said, and you told us to get the F out of there. He goes, well, I definitely would have done that. And I said, no, it was you. So I reached into my pocket, and I pull out my cell phone. I go, hey, is this still your cell phone number? He goes, holy shit, you do know me. We had exchanged cards and information. Hey, if you guys ever need anything, you know, if you got a case, if you need, whatever it happens to be, because that whole fraternity again. And I just locked it into my phone.
Wow.
And now, 11 years later, I run into him on a street corner in Washington, D.C. And we have just a great friendship. I mean, it just solidified it. And, you know, we've gone to events together, and he comes up to Connecticut, and I go down to New York. And if I've had cases that I've worked on, and when he was in a particular unit, I could call him up and say, hey, I got this guy I'm looking for. Can you help me out? And in both cases, he found the guy and locked him up for me.
That's great.
On an outstanding warrant from another state. So those are the good kind of stories, because that fraternalism and that ability to interact with people and make contacts in other places is a real joy and a pleasure, and it's kind of just a neat thing to have in a job.
Absolutely. So, you know, man, we've had a lot of guests on this show, and not one point, I'm so shocked. At no point did any cop that's ever been on the show say, oh yeah, I shot that guy and wanted to. But that's the feedback that seems to be sort of the narrative these days of you're cops, you're bad people. What do you say to that? Well,
I have a good story that came from very similar to that. They had asked for volunteers to go to an urban league function in Hartford. And they had asked officers from the surrounding municipalities in the suburbs to come and sit down with junior urban league members, which are generally late teens, early 20s, black, Spanish, what have you, people that live in the community. And they were looking to have a foster dialogue. So it was a free lunch. So I said, sure, I'm going to go. So we went downtown Hartford and we had lunch, and it was kind of like the high school dance. You know, you had the girls on one side of the room and the boys on the other, so the cops are all over here and we're talking to one another and we kind of know each other. And then the people from the community are here. And then you have to break up into groups. And so now you sit down and it's a little bit more intimate setting, and you're kind of like pushing out all the sound from the other conversations. And so I was very fortunate. I had a table. It was a mother and a daughter. She owned a catering company. Unfortunately, I don't remember what her daughter did. And so you try to get the dialogue going, and you know that the questions are going to come up, just like if you're in a social setting. Have you ever shot anybody?
Right, of course.
And I looked at her and I said, yeah, as a matter of fact, I have. And she was kind of aghast. And she says, well, what happened? And I said, well, unfortunately, I said, we went to a call, and it had a person who had mental health issues that wasn't taking his medication. It was a long, proactive thing, but he punched a firefighter who initially responded to the call. He choked out a police dog. He wasn't responding to commands. He was a very large man, very strong man. And at one point, we had the shotgun with the less lethal rounds, and he wasn't following commands, and we were afraid that somebody was going to get hurt. And at any point in time, we would have been totally justified using lethal force, but we don't want to do that. I said, so unfortunately, you know, I shot him twice with the less than lethal rounds. And she goes, well, that doesn't count. I said, well, I'm sorry, but if I have a 12-gauge shotgun pointed at me and you pull the trigger, I don't care what's coming out of it, the noise that it makes and the reaction that it has counts. So that kind of broke the ice. Sure. And I said, well, you have to understand something. I said, television portrays police in a bad light for two different reasons. I said, first of all, they think we have all this crazy gizmos and computers and stuff where I can throw stuff on the wall and on the table and everything else and have your mother's maiden name and your picture come up. I go, that just doesn't exist. So there's an unreasonable expectation of how we do our job and the time frame it takes to do the things that we have to do when we're serving people. I said the second part of it is the violence. I said the violence on TV has led to a lot of problems that we have with kids in the schools and video games and everything else, which is a whole nother conversation. I said, but if you think about this for a second and just look at the reality of it, I said, would you really want to be employed in a job like they do on TV where you're involved in 5 or 6 shootouts in a 30 or a 40-minute period on television? I said, I don't want to do that. And I go, for purely selfish reasons. She says, what's that? I said, it's going to cost me money. She goes, what do you mean? I said, because if I am forced to take somebody's life, which I have the statutory authority to, and I really don't want to, I said, I get put on the desk. Mm-hmm. I said, I don't get any overtime. I said, I don't get to work any cases. I'm kind of in limbo. And then I get investigated by somebody from outside my agency, and I'm under the microscope and I'm under scrutiny. And I know that there's the cliche, it's better to be judged by 12 than carried by 6. I said, but that really isn't reality. I said, because no, I don't want to be carried by 6 because I have no desire to lose my life. I said, and I really don't want to take a life, but when I get put in that position by somebody's actions, I said, you leave me no choice. So you kind of get backed into a corner when something like that happens and you hear the horror stories. I said, and that gets portrayed by the media. And I said, they pick up on a little snippet of what actually happened and it gets blown out of proportion. I said, but the other part of it is, I said, think about from our perspective. I said, if you really think that you have somebody that is trigger happy and looking to kill somebody, I go, would you want to work in that environment with somebody being on edge all the time? I go, that's psychopath, that's a sociopath, somebody actually thinks like that. I said, so if you take a step back from your thought process and you just think about what you said, I go, it really doesn't make a lot of sense. Good for you. And I started to get to them and we started to have a bond and now the guard was down and now there were the conversations and one of the big things always comes up is about racism and gender and all that kind of stuff. I said, you have to understand something. People are predisposed to having preconceived notions about other people based on their life experience. Sure. And I can be somebody that is prejudiced about a behavior, a look, something that kind of sets me off, but that doesn't necessarily make me a racist. Mm-hmm. And I said, you have to be able to distinguish between the two because they don't always go together. Sure. And so, I got examples. Well, I got stopped by the police and I got a hard time and I got stopped by the police there and they're targeting us. I said, if I stop you for tinted windows and you're driving by, I said, I can't see in the car. I said, so what color skin do you have? I said, you could be purple for all I care. Right. I said, I'm addressing a violation because it's a state law. It's not a law in the municipality I work in or the squad that I work for. I go, it's a state law and we're enforcing it because that's what we're being paid to do. And there are reasons that we do it. We look to reduce accidents and to reduce injuries. And I said, for motor vehicle stuff, which is generally most of the complaints we get in the suburbs, I go, if you don't have insurance and you crash into somebody, now you're creating a great hardship for somebody's family. Right. Now they're going to have to go to pocket, or you're going to injure somebody because you're driving without a license. I see, and all these little things focus on a quality of life. I said, that's what you hire us for. You hire us to ensure that you have a good quality of life, but you have to let us do our job, and you have to have people that take responsibility for their action. Absolutely. I don't go out looking for you. I can walk out the door and you're going to run right into me with very little effort.
Good stuff, man. Well, our hope with this whole series is that we just want to show that you guys want to go home to your families just as we do. You want to go be able to do your job and make a paycheck and provide for your loved ones just like everybody else does. So I hope you guys all continue to watch and to share these videos. And brother, I really appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your support of us.
My pleasure. Cheers. God bless America.